Welcome to episode 39 of the Tri-State Hockey Podcast, presented by Bet365. I'm your host, Jonny Lazarus, joined by my good friends, longtime NHL reporter Arthur Staple and Stanley Cup champion Mike Rupp. Fellas, Pete DeBoer as the head coach of the New York Islanders is old news. Tom Fitzgerald got fired 2 hours ago. Crazy what has happened here over the past 3 or 4 days between all three teams. We can count the Rangers in with the back-to-back hat tricks, the fights and everything. But, oh my God, man, the Islanders giving us some news. The Devils giving us some news. I don't know where to begin. I feel like the DeBoer thing was what we were so excited to talk about. And then all of a sudden we get the news about an hour or two ago that Tom Fitzgerald was fired. So I don't know. Where do you guys want to start? I feel like we got to go with Fitz. It's fresh. It's hot. It's what everyone's talking about. Arthur, what did you make originally of the news?
I mean, the one similarity between these two events is it kind of felt like they were going to happen anyway at the end of the season. That Patrick Waugh, especially with the way they played since the Olympic break, 10-10, and then this, last week was a total disaster. The meltdown against Pitt, late goal beats them in Buffalo, and the total no-shows in the first half of the Philly game and pretty much the entire game in Carolina kind of sealed the deal. So I think if it didn't happen now, it was going to happen in 2 weeks when the Islanders inevitably probably miss the playoffs. It feels like with 4 games left, they'd have to go 4-0 and get a ton of help with all the teams that are around them. So on that front, not a total surprise, but I think the aggressiveness is a huge surprise. And then you go to Jersey, and we've been talking about it pretty much since December that it was Fitz managing for his job this year. Did the Quinn Hughes situation was the thing that pushed ownership over the edge. We kind of felt like, are they waiting? Are they waiting? Should they wait? It didn't seem like it was smart to wait given everything else that was going on. And frankly, maybe the Islanders making that move coupled with Toronto moving on from Brad Treliving, Nashville making their change with Barry Trotz, both those teams starting down the road to finding new executives. Maybe that spurred David Blitzer and Josh Harris to say, okay, we got to start this process now, even at an odd time with a week and a half to go in a season where they're not going to make the playoffs, even though they've been playing great. So, that's the through line between these two teams, that inevitably these were probably moves that were going to happen. But I think kudos to both owners for making the move early. Islanders jumping the line, which was going to be a big line for Peter DeBoer, and Jersey makes this move now. We don't know who they're going to bring in, but if they're jumping the line for someone, we'll get into the names. If they're jumping the line for Brendan Shanahan to come in and run their hockey operations, smart move to do it now, just like it was for the Islanders.
Robert?
Yeah, I mean, it's the timing of all this, I think, league-wide, it's kind of
it's weird.
The unique part of it, right? I mean, the Islanders are in a part right now, or in a place right now where, even going back to the Vegas, those were teams that they still have the eyes on the playoffs here. So at least there's that. I think that it ends up being what Arthur said, just everybody's kind of been talking about that, is that just you don't want to be caught waiting around in this situation. And for some teams, and there's going to be more that are going to get in line here for some of these coaches, for some of these potential GMs. And, you don't want to be one of those teams that is left with no dancing partner, So, it was kind of weirdly worded. I felt like the release in some regards. I was trying to read and figure out, I don't know. Is that just coming to the same place and just kind of saying, hey, we're gonna part ways and move on, or is that just the public way of doing it? I don't know, but it's weird timing wise, because the Devils aren't going to make the playoffs, and you would think that it was just going to be kind of wait till the end of the regular season. But I give them credit for being proactive here and start this process as soon as you can.
Well, I do think part of it, and this is just from, talking to people over the last hour, is like Tom Fitzgerald wanting to have his hat in the ring for the Nashville job, right? Like, I think the sooner that they get this done, the sooner he knows if he's in the running for that. Like, and honestly, if that is the case, like, kudos to him for stepping up and trying to make something happen, I guess, if he knew he wasn't going to get renewed here or his job wasn't going to continue here. But also on the flip side, it's like, if the Devils ownership saw this coming, why did they let him handle the deadline? Why? I think the Devils fans have every right to be happy that this finally got done, but also every right to be pissed that they didn't even finish the season. Like, you know what I mean? If this was going to be the decision, at least just go through the whole season with it. I don't know. That's how I would feel right now if I was a Devils fan.
And it's the same. This is the same thing kind of going on with Toronto as well. You know what I mean? Like it's you could sit there and say, well, if you knew this, then why? I mean, I guess we'll see if we get answers on that. Probably won't.
But
But
Toronto
at the end
season,
of the
it
day,
felt like it was more done than the Devils at the deadline, if that makes sense. Like the Devils still had like a chance, I feel like, at the deadline.
No,
I don't think so.
I think they were in the same. The way the
think?
Devils played, in the last few games heading into the Olympic break, and those first 3 out of it, they were cooked. So
they were done. They were done. And then that's the other part too. It's like, everybody's trying to read the tea leaves as far as the deadline goes, and the lack of moves for the Devils too always made you wonder, was there restrictions on what could be done? Like, these are all what ifs. We don't know the answer to it, but at the end of the day, when you got to make that move, and these organizations, coaches, GMs have done that now.
Yeah, I think the Devils thing is still also interesting because if you remember back to Tom Fitzgerald's press conference earlier this year, he said him and Sheldon were in lockstep, right? So now it's like there's a few games left. The Islanders have fired their coach with a few games left. Granted, they're fighting for the playoffs. Vegas fighting for the playoffs. Devils are eliminated, or not officially yet, but I think they will be probably tonight or tomorrow or the next few days. You have to think that Sheldon is getting fired now. Like there's no way his job is safe. Like I would be very, very, very surprised if Sheldon Keefe is coaching this team come October next year.
I agree. I think you're bringing in a new executive, possibly 2 new executives. I think they're going to want their own people. It certainly sounds like to me, just in the initial reaction to it, you can't say that for sure which direction ownership is going to go, but it doesn't sound like they're going to stay in-house and look at any of their assistant GMs, who are all pretty qualified people. So, and to me, what's interesting is with Toronto and with Nashville, they've been very public, it seems, about saying, or at least the list that you see from Nashville, the public statements from Keith Pelly, the head of MLSE in Toronto, those 2 teams are charting new courses. They are not going for big established names. It seems that, I feel like for Fitz, if he's going to get a sniff in Nashville, it's going to be as a president. And then maybe that, there's a first-time GM that goes along with it, or a senior advisor type of role. They seem like they're very committed to giving a first-time GM a shot there. And Toronto, Pelly's press conference, where he's basically saying, we want somebody who's puts analytics first and analytics focused, and the people that do those jobs in the league could move to the forefront there. That's a very different path than they've walked down before. So Jersey, to me, it's really wide open. You're the only team out of those 3 that's ready to compete. There are a few more saves and a few less injuries away from being a team that's close to where Carolina is. And frankly, even if the season had 10 more games, would you bet against them to miss the playoffs? Like, I think they'd make it. Like, they're a good team. We talked about it at the beginning of the year. We talked about it in the last few weeks. They seem like they're ready with a couple of tweaks in the front office. So we'll see if this is quick. I can't imagine that you do this now, knowing that you're going to have to change some things in the front office with all the people that have worked with Fitz for a long, long time, and before that with Ray Shero. If you're going to change the coach, you need to get in line now with one less established guy that's out there. So you've subtracted DeBoer. Now you're looking at Bruce Cassidy. You're looking at Peter Laviolette. Maybe you're looking at some guys that might be available behind him with some experience, depending on what happens at the end of the season. So when you make this aggressive move, the Islanders did it right. You fire your coach. You don't say, yeah, we'll see what happens. You go out and get the guy you want. So if Jersey has someone in mind that they want to go out and get to be their head executive, I would expect to see something in the next few days where they're charting a new path, and the time of the season doesn't really matter anymore. I feel like maybe this is the start of a new era in the NHL, where teams really try to be aggressive at the end of a season where there's going to be changes, instead of just kind of waiting and waiting in line and kind of, auditioning people and having interviews and that sort of thing. You gotta strike while you can, kind of like they do in the NFL. You can't wait around too much. So I'm interested to see what these next few days bring for Jersey, and how much downstream change happens from there.
Yeah, the other thing too is like we kind of spoke on this before, just the way that some of the end of season meetings happen, whether it's the regular season ending or when you get eliminated from the playoffs, your exit meetings. There could be a lot of teams that don't know what they're going to do. They could be split. It could depend what happens here in the next few weeks, leading into the playoffs, even a round or two. Um, Exit meetings generally stir some stuff up, and you could see some more, whether it's a GM, whether it's a coach. You're going to have some more openings happening. So, yeah, I mean, it's an opportunity for some of these teams like the Devils to go out there, get ahead of it a little bit, start having these conversations, try to jump the pack a little bit, because when you have a team like the Toronto Maple Leafs out there, you don't know. There's certain spots that may be revered more, and so you want to make sure you got people's attention. And I mean, even from the Islanders standpoint, kind of jumping over to them, like Pete DeBoer going there, like Pete would have been, like you guys mentioned, the front of everybody's list, if he let this run, and he'd get probably a lineup of teams here. But maybe that's why the Islanders get him on that term, and they sit there and they make that commitment, because they got to nail it home right now. So I don't know if it's something similar, except for management position here for the Devils, but it's an opportunity for them. So I give them credit for making that move now.
Okay, so is there a conversation to have about like which organization's more attractive right now between the two, Islanders and Devils? Like, let's say, obviously Darsh is there for the time being, but like, if you were to pick one right now of who to run with the next, let's say, 3 to 5 years, which team are you taking? I actually think it's closer than it is further apart.
It's closer now because of Schaefer, but I'm still taking the Devils.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm an Islander guy. I love what they've done this year. They certainly have the edge in goal, but I feel like, when the season started, I picked the Devils to be in the Stanley Cup final. I felt pretty good about that, whatever, a month and a half into the season. And obviously the injuries hit and everything else fell apart. But you watch them play now, and I feel like who they're going to choose, this is it's not a search and rescue operation. It's not where we gotta start fresh here. This team is 75% of the way there to being a perennial contender for me. Like, you watch the way they play now. I get it. Like, there are guys, maybe a couple of defensemen you don't want on this team for the long haul. Some forwards who maybe need some shifting around. You probably need to see, you need to see a lot more from certain core guys. But if they make this change and they bring in, let's say they bring in Shanny, and Shanny brings in a first-time GM, and they get rid of Sheldon Keefe and they bring in Bruce Cassidy, to my mind, if you make no other changes, they're a top 4 team in the East right off of that. They need to get some saves. They need a couple of tweaks here and there, but you watch them play. Jake Allen has been a really good 1B goalie for them this year. He's top 5 right now in goals saved above expectation. Markstrom wasn't great. You have to sort that out. Maybe there's a new GM can figure out a way to jettison that extension or move on from him if you don't feel like you have the confidence in him, and start fresh with somebody else to go with Allen. Again, the Dougie Hamilton, maybe you move him. Simone Nemec, maybe you move him if he's asking for too much money. These are all details to me. It's a good team, and they failed miserably this year on a lot of levels. Bad luck, bad decision-making in terms of trying to make this huge acquisition that I think would have changed a lot of things for Fitz and for the organization. But they are ahead of the pack for a lot of these teams that are going to be making these changes this offseason for me.
Just kind of looking forward, I guess. Yeah, as far as the Devils go, you see that game last night. I mean, I guess there's not a lot to talk about as far as the Devils go until we find out who is next in line for the GM job, and I guess if they're going to hire someone separately as a president, right? Because now it's both roles that are open. Rupper, I don't know if you wanted to mention just last night, like, we were talking about that moment with Jack Hughes, Brendan Dillon, and what this team is still playing for down the line here. Like, this is not a team playing for nothing, and they know the criticism has been loud all year. And again, like, it feels like every year the Devils are the team next year that a lot of people are going to be interested in what they can do and what their expectations might be. Obviously, Arthur, you just mentioned, like, you had them going to the conference final. I don't know if those expectations should drop. They shouldn't, right? If they're fully healthy, that is probably at least the ceiling for this team, right? And that's kind of what they're still playing for. I don't know, Rupper, what'd you make of just last night's game and how everything's kind of played out here in the last few weeks?
Yeah, I mean they've looked great. They've had a couple duds, but every hockey team has those. But I think they have looked much more like the team I think that everybody expected. Maybe the team we saw in that first month plus of the season, where they they look like they are that high octane kind of offense that can get going. They have a bunch of weapons. So I still think that there's things on the roster that need to be shaken out. That there needs to be some more flexibility on the roster. I know we talked about the no moves and all the stuff that maybe would hold back a GM. I think you got to try to do your best to remove some of those and try to find a way to have a little bit more freedom, because you never know when a big opportunity is going to come swinging at something. I mean, I know we were kind of just making up the old scenario with Brady Tkachuk. Like if he got freed up, like you can't get caught in the same situation you got caught with Quinn Hughes. So I think that's a GM's job too, is to try to give a little more roster flexibility, but they need help. I mean, this is the Stars look good. They've got some pieces that I thought really kind of stepped up this year. And we know Cody Glass had some great moments. Arseny Grisyuk, Simone Nemetz has had his first real strong campaign. Yeah, I don't know where you kind of go, but they look like a team that just needs to be tweaked, like Arthur said. I still think still need a little bit of discrepancy. Like I would love to see like a fast fourth line that just hit everything that moved. I mean, they'd chip in from time to time, but just kept the tempo up. I mean, it's a tempo team. Like this team, when they get cooking, and you need someone just to kind of keep that foot on the gas and those depth pieces on those lines. So yeah, I don't know where you kind of go from here, but I would much rather the team win down the stretch in quote unquote garbage time than not. I know a lot of people, and you have to take it with a grain of salt. You can't sit there and be like, oh, okay, well, everything's status quo. And I think that this is an example of why that they're not looking at it that way. And it's great, because winning this time of year, you don't want to get caught in kind of Buffalo Sabres land, even though they look good right now. All those years of kind of looking like that team at the end of the year, and then let's run this thing back in a lot of regards. So I don't believe New Jersey's going to do that. They know they got to tweak some things. I'm very curious to see who comes in to make those decisions, because I agree with Arthur, and especially looking in this Eastern Conference, is there anybody moving forward that scares you? Like this, if there's one thing we learned this year, is that the East there's a lot of teams in a lot of situations, and I'd say the Devils would be in the upper third of that. They're in a pretty good spot, and they just got to get some help kind of getting over the hump. So yeah, no, it's exciting. I love the way they're playing. The one thing that I wanted to bring up was that you mentioned it with the Dylan and Jack Hughes. Jack has been, listen, I was hard on Jack. This is good shit though, right here. Like this is stuff. Like I've been that guy in the box there after a fight, and when you get acknowledgement from the guys like this, like he got in the box, and look at that. Like that's leadership right there. And I don't, it's great seeing Jack growing up in front of our eyes here and kind of taking these things on, and looks like he's taking pride in that. And I don't know, maybe it's been coming this whole time. Maybe the Olympics kind of push that on, and he's got more on his plate. He knows even more so that he's got to be the guy, and he is the guy. He's one of the guys. I mean, just look at how many Devil games got picked up on national television now since the Olympics. It's all great stuff, but this is the great stuff, that he's recognizing that and taking a step in his leadership, and that to me is bigger than anything a GM is going to come in here and do, because it's going to be infectious. And you got to have the next guys and kind of trickle down their lineup. So, yeah, garbage time, some may say it. I love what I'm seeing right now, and I can't wait to see what kind of changes are made in the summer.
Can you put a positive spin on this season because of that? Because it's like a really big year of maturity for Jack Hughes, and it's another year of hardships for the Devils, and they make a GM change. Like, can you look at now and say, look at the season now and say this year needed to happen for these appropriate changes to be made, like for Jack to grow up,
I mean,
Tom Fitzgerald to be fired. I guess you can Arthur, you don't like that? No, you don't like that positive spin?
I just think you can make the Stanley Cup final and have that happen too. It doesn't. You don't have to suck to do that stuff.
No, and there's been there's been things that we thought, and as long as it keeps moving in this direction, and you see that stuff and it continues to move, because the other part too, it's like there were moments where the team didn't look very mature in the way that things were handled. And just even talking about, even with Jack being out, like that you need guys to step up. And as much as we want to always say, and it's very true, and we know how electrifying he is as a player, there is a problem when he's out and that you can't get that elevation from other guys. That's a character flaw on your team. You need someone to drag them along in some way. And it may look different. It will look different because you can't replace the Jack Hughes. But even the Jack stuff, like I love this stuff and I want to look forward with this stuff. But there's also moments this year where the fan base was frustrated in ways that maybe interviews went. There's times with the whole missing time to begin with. We don't know all of that situation. So all I care about is what you see now and just kind of keep trucking forward. And this is good. He looks awesome. The team looks like they got a little bit of an edge to them and look like the team that we thought they'd be.
Is there a concern now?
I'll jump in. Sorry, Johnny. I'll jump in. Fitz has been there the whole time. He wasn't the GM when they drafted him, but when they drafted Jack, but he took over during his first season. So Jack has only known one GM and one front office. And so the situation changes. And so I think that is really good timing to see this stuff from him. And I hope it continues. I hope he doesn't, kind of sag a little bit, thinking that maybe how they played after the break could have saved Fitz's job or done something to change things. I hope he continues on, and it's independent of whatever is going on with the front office, with the coaching staff. And he says, I've got to be this guy no matter what, no matter who's here, no matter who's managing me, no matter who's coaching me, because the team needs it. And we need to change the dynamic. We need to change the way people view us as, like Rupper said, an immature team, or a team that falls apart when one or two guys or three guys are out, especially him. And I think you have to do it quick, because you get a bunch of fresh sets of eyes coming in, a new front office, one guy, two guys who are going to sit down with Jack at that introductory meeting. We talk about exit meetings. These intro meetings will be interesting too, whether it's, if it's someone with the pedigree of a Brendan Shanahan who sits down and says, are you all in? Are you committed? Can you be the leader of this team for years and years to come? It's maybe not going to feel like a fair question for Jack, but it's a natural one for anybody who's coming into this job. You have the talent, but you need the buy-in. And so I feel like there's going to be, whoever it is there's going to be some interesting developments this offseason. I don't know, like we said, I don't know that you need to see a ton of changes, but I think you need to see the full buy-in and the full acceptance that, all right, whatever they did, their GM is out, the only one that most of them have ever played for. Their coach is probably out, which is going to be another one, whatever it is now, 3 or 4 for most of those guys. Kind of like how it was for some of the younger Rangers. After a point, you have to say, well, you can't keep saying it's the coach, or it's somebody else. You gotta look inward and say, okay, we're the ones that control whether we get a 5th coach in a couple of years or get a 3rd GM in a few years. So you have to have those hard conversations if you're the executive coming in. And I imagine the guys themselves will want to have those hard conversations and do what they can to kind of steel themselves for whatever's to come, because it's, change is going to happen, and it's going to be a new experience for most of those core guys.
Speaking of that, coming on July 1st, Nico Hischier is ready for an extension. He's got 1 year left on his contract. You got to think that's a big part of everything that happens over this summer too, right? Like, you got to get the guy who comes in and has a good relationship with not only Jack Hughes, but Nico Hischier, to get him to buy in for the long run. Because, we spent all this time talking about the Devils going to get Quinn, the Devils and Jack and Brady Tkachuk, and we haven't really talked about Nico Hischier's contract situation, right? And what he'd earn. But I would think that, the owners probably have to talk to the Devils, star players, and say, what guy do you want here? What guy do you believe in? Like, is there someone out there that would keep you here, for lack of a better term? You know what I mean? Like, is that not part of this next conversation?
I mean, I don't think so, because I think that that's what you want to get away from. I think you want to get away from not away from it, because that would allude that it's happening. I'm saying
Yeah.
in teams where it gets sticky is where you have players with too much input because of their leadership on the team or their stardom, and I've seen it firsthand. It's fun to sit there and be able to go out for dinners and be like, oh, how'd this guy look here? Next thing you know, the guy's fucking there. It's
Mhm.
cool, but it's not very proactive in
Yeah.
running a business to win a Stanley Cup. So yeah, I mean, I think that you sit there and you talk to the players and you say, maybe this is what you're more of what you're talking about, Johnny. Like, hey, what are the needs of this team? Like you've been here, you've been the leader. You talk to Nico, you talk to Jack, you talk to the guys who've been here. Like, what are some areas that we struggle at? Where can we be better? Where can you be better? What can we do to get you to a place that gets the best out of you? And you get that feedback, but you can't. I don't think it's targeting
You can't
players.
get a
You're not
buddy
naming.
buddy. Yeah.
No, it's not even that. Not even, you're not naming players, and the GM's GM, the players play, the coach's coach. And if it's anything other than that, like, yeah, it's a slippery slope.
Mhm. Arthur, would you be surprised if it's not Brendan Shanahan?
No, I mean, I don't have any great insight into it, but I know that it's a guy who's a legendary Devil. He knows the organization well for all his years that he's been in the league and was a part of that organization. Obviously, things are different now, but I think it's just when you look at the guys that have experience that are out there, and if you want to get a president, you sort of see whether guys are kind of not campaigning for it, but you see Chris Pronger is doing, he's written his book and he's doing all kinds of media, and Prongs is a great guy. And he's got a lot of knowledge about the game. I think he's kind of like where Shanny was when Shanny retired. Like, he's ready to take that step. He's learned a lot in the years that he's been retired, and worked with some teams, worked with the league a little bit. So I think he wants to put that knowledge into action, and it makes a lot of sense for him to be somewhere. But are you going to hire him as a team president, as a first-time executive, and then, who do you pair with him to be a GM? Mark Bergevin, I feel like, is maybe the other guy that's kind of out there now, as he's an assistant GM right now. But if you're talking experience, there's just not a lot of guys out there. Dean Lombardi's name got thrown out for, in Toronto and Nashville. He's obviously won a couple cups as GM and been advising for a long time. But to me, when it comes to Shanny, just knowing from talking to people who worked with him in Toronto, the structure, the things that he brought to the Leafs were, he brought a ton of innovation. It's funny to me to hear Keith Pelly talk about, we got to be focused on data. They've got the biggest analytics department in the league by a long way. And a guy in Daryl Metcalf, who's a really, really sharp guy who runs that department, who's, worked with Kyle Dubas for a long time. So I feel like the Leafs have been on the cutting edge. They obviously haven't put it all together with, and you can't just say because we have the biggest budget to have the best analytics team and the best, medicine and recovery team and the best nutrition, the best psychoanalytical team. It doesn't always translate into wins on the ice. Obviously, you have a salary cap. You have to fill your roster, and the Leafs made plenty of mistakes on Shanny's watch. But I think if you're coming to an organization that's had a ton of continuity for a long, long time, going from Fitz as an assistant GM, taking over for Ray, having a lot of their assistant GMs be there for multiple years, there's a comfort level there, and you have a guy who's overhauled an organization before. And if maybe the Devils don't need an overhaul in the front office, maybe they don't need that sort of president, but I think he just commands a certain respect and his vision of what a successful operating team is. And I understand, like I said, the Leafs didn't accomplish a whole lot on the ice while he was there. And that is, Toronto is just a different animal when it comes to that kind of stuff. But I just think he is the first name that I think of when I think, okay, they're moving on. The ownership needs somebody to kind of be in charge downstream. You find a GM, you can afford then to take a shot on a first-time GM. Maybe the Devils find their own Kyle Dubas if Shanny comes in. Maybe they turn to a coach who's got a little bit of experience, who's the coach that can kind of push them to get those extra 10 or 12 points or those extra 2 or 3 playoff wins. I just think if you're turning over the operation, and I think the way that Harris and Blitzer have let the team operate with Fitz, they're pretty hands off, it seems. And I think if you're going to do that, you want a steady hand at the helm. So that's why I naturally think of Shanny, and I imagine he'll get a look here and have some sort of conversation. But yeah, I don't have any special insight, but it just sort of feels like a right fit.
Rupper, in all seriousness, had you ever considered a front office job? Just kind of curious. We see all these former players getting them and taking them. I'm just kind of curious if you ever thought about it.
I mean, mine more so when I was done playing, at opportunities in like the coaching realm, and just
I'm not saying now, by the way. I'm just saying at one point.
No, yeah, I mean, no, just yeah, I mean, eventually, I'd love to get involved in that, and there's a process though in that. So, I'm realistic in that, and I see the work that goes into it, and I respect the work that goes into it. So, that's the one thing I will say. I will say with Fitzy, I never took him up on it, but he was always great. He's a good man. He really is. I know maybe some Devil fans are frustrated, but Fitzy would always tell me, and I bounced some things off of him. Hey, you ever want to come around and shadow me for a week? Come on in and see how these things work. And let's not forget, like Tom Fitzgerald was the first player development title down in Nashville. And Ray Shiro, was it Ray, or was it? I think it was Ray, under Ray at that time. And so Fitzy, when I was in Pittsburgh, was there. Ray Shiro was obviously the GM there, and Fitzy had that role, and he was great talking to the guys. And I guess my point in all this is the way that the game has evolved. A lot of it started back with that group. As far as player development was never existent when my younger years playing. So you never had someone that can kind of bridge that gap from a coach and just a former player that's going to come down and maybe tell you how some of these things are, and what it means to be a pro, and all these great things. So he's paid his dues and worked his way up, and it's taken a lot of time, and I respect the heck out of that. So yes, to your question, I'd love to do that and climb that ladder someday, but it's something that you respect, and you don't. I don't believe that you could just be airdropped in that situation. So it would be something that when I'm ready to maybe try to get into that, I'll look to do so.
It is crazy when you look back. Like Tom Fitzgerald's first year at the Devils was 2015-16. He's been here for 10 years now.
Yeah.
So it is, I'm sure, sad for a lot of the guys who have been here in the organization for a long time to see him go. We already mentioned the Hughes' relationship with him and whatnot. So I guess that's going to be tough for, Jack kind of going through this adversity for the first time in his career, right? This is the first GM change he's ever really had, or I guess Ray was there, but I guess in the significant parts of his career, this might be some adversity as well, or just a new chapter. Any other final thoughts on the Devils before we kind of pivot and go Pete DeBoer, Patrick Waugh, and Islanders here? Kind of crazy again. Yeah. What?
Yeah. No, I just wanted to kind of going off what you said, and kind of Arthur mentioning like a guy like Shanny, and obviously his resume as a player is incredible, and he's got the cups and all that stuff. And here's the part that I kind of hoping for the Devils is that president role, or whatever title they want to give, to hire two. And I'd like for there to be a guy that in that kind of ilk of a Brendan Shanahan that can kind of be the head of it, but not the day-to-day, and kind of have, I think it's really important to separate and to talk to a guy like Jack is seen and introduced to new things now from the Olympics, man. His trajectory of the rest of his life is really taken off. And I think it's really big for someone to be in place to just let him play hockey. Just play hockey. That's it. Because that's what he loves. That's what he's great at. So I think having someone in a role like that kind of can settle things, a Hall of Famer, those things, I think that would serve well for not just the organization, but for Jack as well.
Is there someone that you had in mind, like from your playing days, not now, like when you were playing, who was someone that was, maybe separate from the president, that was in that role that you're speaking of?
I don't really think I was on teams really that had that. I don't recall. I mean, it just kind of had the GM and AGM and stuff like that. And there's nothing wrong with that model if that's what they go for. But then I guess my point is I think it's always beneficial, almost in that same regard, of just a little more relational, that it's not like GMs have a relationship with the players, but then it's like that GM's still the one that's going to execute trades, going to go. It
Yeah.
just have someone a little bit, separate from a GM. I think it's with a certain pedigree, I think. But no, I didn't really have anybody in that role. That's why I think it's a valuable role, and it's something I think that could benefit.
Mm-hmm. All right, Arthur, let's get into Pete DeBoer, Patrick Waugh. We did it a little bit this morning, but now we've heard the comments from Matthew Darsh. We've heard the comments from Pete DeBoer. Has your mind changed at all just from hearing the two of them talk?
No, I'm more into it now than I was before, which I figured I would, because Pete doesn't look like he kind of looks like a quiet tactician, but he's a sharp guy. He's got a great way of expressing things, and I know the way that it ended in Dallas with kind of the game of telephone or whatever it was, running down Jake Ottinger, and at the end of that playoff series, I think it's just, I find the kind of the trope, and it's mostly online, and I guess I should ignore it, of the like retreads is always the thing that you see thrown out. They want, some fans, especially the ones online, want new. They want somebody fresh. They want to pull somebody from a different spot. And I feel like when it comes to coaches, and I said this before, we are in the golden age of NHL coaches. These guys are full-on lifers. They're not guys that retired and then kind of eased in the way that it did 50, 60 years ago. This is like a bunch of like mini Scotty Bowmans that we're dealing with, whether it's Peter Laviolette, whether it's Lindy Ruff, whether it's Peter DeBoer. You don't get these guys to come along very often. There's only a couple of them, and you see the way that Matthew Darsh went about this. To hear him tell it Saturday night after the loss in Carolina, he has one conversation, and maybe there was some informal back and forth with DeBoer, but he has one conversation with Peter DeBoer, and by Sunday morning, this guy is the new coach of the Islanders, and Patrick Waugh's out. So I think Matthew Darsh, coming from that Julien Brisebois Tampa front office, where Tampa has obviously never had, they haven't had to do anything with their coach in 13 years, which is a godsend. But with their personnel, where they are saying every year they say to themselves, we're going to go for it because we think we can win. Matthew Darsh has looked at this team in all its, with all its flaws, all of its successes this year, and said, I think we can win. And I think we need this coach to make it happen. And Scott Malkin, the principal owner, said, go for it. So they eat 2 years on Patrick Waugh, and they bring Peter DeBoer in for, the rest of this little season, plus 3 more years from what I've heard, is a pretty significant salary per year, talking maybe a lot closer to Mike Sullivan than at the middle end. And that's a huge commitment for this franchise. We don't really see this. The only time we've ever really seen it is when Lou Lamoriello went out and got Barry Trotz, like I said, basically off the parade float in Washington, and brought him in. And you saw the instant results that brought, the instant respect that brought to a team that was going through some changes, that just lost. It was about to lose John Tavares in free agency. Didn't matter. They brought them up a level because they said, our GM, our owner, has made a commitment to us, and we're gonna respond to it. And so I think there's a lot to like about it. There's a lot of promise to it. It doesn't mean it's all going to come to fruition this offseason, but kind of like how you, me, and Colby talked about, I really believe Matthew Darsh is going to be, if he can, super aggressive this offseason and remaking some key corners of this roster, because Peter DeBoer is not coming in to sort of wait to win. He's a turnaround specialist. His teams go deep in the playoffs in their first year, probably teams that were better than this Islander team. But you've got 4 months of an offseason to turn it into a better team, to be prepared for what Peter DeBoer is going to bring. If they can squeak into the playoffs and make some noise, great. That's gravy to me. This is a move that has very little to do with these last 4 games and more to do with the near-term future of the Islanders, and I think that makes it pretty bright.
I'm happy you mentioned this Islander team. And Rupper, before I just get your opinion on the move to hire Pete DeBoer, I am curious because, I did hear a comment earlier today that this Islanders team reminds people a little bit of that 2012 Devils team. I didn't necessarily see the comparison. That team had Marty Brodeur, even though you can say Sorokin is obviously a very good goalie, but having Ilya Kovalchuk, Patrick Elias, those guys are, obviously legendary forwards, and I don't think the Devils had anyone on the blue line equivalent to what Matthew Schaefer is looking like this year. But you played in a playoff series against a Pete DeBoer coach team. Granted, it was 14 years ago, which is crazy to think about. It was that long. But you could speak firsthand to what a Pete DeBoer style of team plays like, especially in the playoffs. And I'm wondering if there's anything specific about that you could share or something that you've noticed.
I mean, just going back to that 2012 year, that was the frustrating part. And I always joke around. I was, buddies with some of the guys on the Devils when I was on the Rangers there. And I remember talking to those guys. I always give them a hard time still till today, where it's like, we were the better team, the Rangers, all season. Extremely better than the Devils, I believe, in my mind.
Me
But
too.
in those playoffs, Pete had them. But I'll tell you what, dude, we had no chance in that series. Like, Pete had that team just mowing through. Like, they were just a well-oiled machine, everybody on the same page. And it's like when that series got going, I mean, I always get shit from Devils fans for shoving Marty in that series.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if you remember that, Johnny.
Yeah, of course.
And you know what? I did it because I didn't seek out to do it. I went out to do something to try to get some energy, and I went and I hit I hit whatever defenseman behind the net, and the referees, I think, were trying to get things under control and call me for a penalty. So I was pissed because I'm like, now I can't even provide a spark. So I pull out my mouth guard and I'm yelling at the referee, and Marty's just standing there, so I just shoved him. Like, I never thought about it prior. And anyways, my point,
he milked it too. Milked it.
My what's that?
He milked it a little bit.
A little bit.
He like
and
flopped. Yeah,
but
he
my,
like
my
flopped.
point my point in doing it, though, doing anything, is we were dead, man. We had nothing. We had no energy. We had no answer for what they were doing. I was just trying to throw some sort of gasoline on the situation. And it didn't end up working out, and the better team won at that time. But I guess my point is, Pete had them. So you don't go on long runs like that in the playoffs that he's had in numerous places without having a well-prepared team and everybody on the same page. And that could be a million things. That could be just having the right schemes. That could be just keeping everybody accountable. I will say, yeah. So right here, like, I had no intention of doing anything to Marty this entire time. I'm yelling at the referee, and I just saw him there. And I'm like, all right. And so anyways, but the thing with Pete, it was funny. I was actually going off the ice and I was yelling at Pete here. So anyways, a little side note. But the thing with Pete is, everybody that's played for him, I don't want this to be misconstrued, because Matthew Schaefer is a young player, and I'm sure he will love Pete DeBoer. Pete is awesome with veteran teams, like veteran-laden teams. The guys, all the vets love him. And that's all I've ever experienced from talking to people who've played for him. And he gets the most out of them. And that's an area where we talk about when we had Matthew Darsh on here, and he kind of said, like, that team has a window right now. And it's like those 30-somethings where if that group is going to do something, it's got to probably happen here now. And I found that really interesting, because this is a hire that supports that as well. So the actions that he's having too, and that doesn't not mean that we should be concerned about Cal Ritchie, or we should be concerned about Matthew Schaefer or any of the other young kids coming. Absolutely not. But this is also to push the envelope on the group that you have right now. And all that kind of works together in a circle, right? Like, so if this team has any success, if they get in this year, if they get in next year, that's all going to help that next young group get the experience and kind of set that standard. So I really do like the hire, because it's a hire that is saying we start today. Like, we need to turn this around today and be competitive with this group. And I think if I'm a veteran player on that team, think from that standpoint, even, I mean, maybe you're not reading into it too much, but you're a guy that with that group, I want a coach that has this level, that has been far, has been right on the edge of going or winning a Stanley Cup. And if you went and just hired someone from a coach that's never coached the National Hockey League again, I don't know how I'd feel as a veteran on that team. So I think that this is Matthew Darsh leaning into that older group a little bit and saying, all right, we're going to try to do something here in these next couple years. And just like what Arthur said, that goes back to Matthew Darsh being aggressive this summer.
Arthur, you got some?
No. Let's hear it.
Obviously I've been texting my Islander fan friends all day. And, one of them is named Phil and he was talking about how Pete DeBoer has helped young guys develop, like the guys in Dallas and Wyatt Johnston and Jason Robertson. But I was pushing back and saying Robertson had 79 points the year before DeBoer even got there. Like, it's not like he really helped Robertson get there. And Wyatt Johnston, yeah, credit to Wyatt Johnson for just having good years under DeBoer. But again, like the thing that concerns me and what I've kind of been saying all day is if DeBoer couldn't get what was pretty much universally known as the most complete roster in the NHL over the last 3 years past the conference final, what makes you think he'll do that with this group right now? Like that's where I am a little concerned. It's like you can talk about Cal Ritchie and maybe compare him to a Wyatt Johnston. Are we going to put pressure on Cal Ritchie to be a 70, 80 point player next year? Probably not. You have weapons like Rupe Hintz, who's probably one of the more underrated guys in the NHL on that team. You bring in Rantanen last year. I'm sure I'm missing one, right? Like who's another stud on Dallas? I got plenty of them. Duchesne, that team was loaded with talent. Like this Islanders team right now, I said it to Arthur this morning, it just feels like it's the wrong timing. And I think with that, Islander fans, while they might have thought it was time for Patrick Waugh, the thing that I'm getting from, friends like Phil and other friends is like, yeah, Waugh got them to overachieve, but the D zone was shit and now it was time. But if Waugh got them to overachieve, isn't that a good thing? Like, how much more overachieving can this team do? That is my question about DeBoer. Like, how much more can he get out of them that Waugh couldn't?
I don't think that the Islanders overachieved. I understand there were no expectations on them this year, but I think finishing with whatever 93, 95 points and missing the playoffs is not overachieving. It's they built the cushion that they had before the Olympic break because Schaefer changed a lot of things for them. Sorokin changed even more things for them. They got, Bo Horvat, who's had some struggles since the Olympic break ended. A couple other guys, Emil Heineman, who had such a hot start. They were winning games that maybe they shouldn't have won, if they were a lesser team or a less confident team or they didn't have Schaefer or whatever. But calling them overachievers to me, overachieving is 110 points for a team that's supposed to have 85.
Like this?
95 this is not an overachieving team. This is a team that papered over Matthew Darsh said it today. They papered over a lot of their pretty glaring flaws from the beginning of the season because the goalie was stopping 7 or 8 high danger shots a night and the 18-year-old defenseman was playing 27 minutes a night and producing, highlight reel offense. So I think the main issue for Patrick Waugh was he just never built a proper D-zone structure. They've had these issues, and the power play is obviously another issue. Power play, I think you can point more to personnel on this roster, not having a lot of game breakers. And certainly Matthew Darsh took his swings before the trade deadline. A lot of names, whether it was Jordan Kyrou, Robert Thomas, Brock Besser. There were a lot of names that seemed to float around, linked to the Islanders. And he ended up with Braden Shen. He ended up with Andre Palat. Not necessarily game breakers, obviously, but trying to goose their chances this year. And now I feel like if they went into the offseason, hypothetically, they don't completely fall apart. They finish with 97 points. They squeak into the playoffs, and Carolina dusts them like they've always done in 6 games or whatever it is. You've gotten to the playoffs. Maybe they commit to keeping Patrick Waugh another year, but have they fixed any of their problems? They haven't. Are they setting themselves up for kind of a mandate almost to make the changes that they need to make? Maybe move on from an Adam Pelech, maybe have some conversations around trading Matthew Barzal this summer to diversify that forward group. Maybe hold a spot open for Victor Eklund, who's come over from Sweden and has put up, I think, 6 points in 5 AHL games. You have to start changing some things, and you can always kick the can down the road. And that's kind of the reason that they are where they are these last 5-6 years, that the contracts that Lou Lamoriello signed, all the extensions of the core guys, going from Barry Trotz to Lane Lambert to Patrick Waugh, you're just kind of floating. And I think this move, much like the move that Lou made with Barry Trotz, says we're not floating. We've got a guy behind the bench who's got a pedigree, who's got certain expectations, And now, even if we don't meet them in this short window we have here, we have to, the rest of the front office, the rest of everybody has to raise their level a bit. You have to bring yourself up to the level to be a team worthy of being led by Peter DeBoer. And if they don't do it, it would be a huge surprise to me if they don't take some big swings this offseason and really try to remake, especially their decor, and get a little bit younger, get a little bit more structure minded, because they've really gotten away from that the last few years and had a couple of seasons where they made the playoffs and didn't do much. And now this year with the collapse, I think Matthew Darsh is a sharp guy, and I think he understood it was time. And if it's time to make those changes, be aggressive with them. This is the first move. It's super aggressive. I can't imagine that they stop here.
Johnny, can I address one thing? And I don't know if
Mhm.
this is even relevant in Islander fan talk online. I haven't seen it, but the whole coaches retread talk that every fan base of every team wants to talk about whenever they get
Yeah.
a coaching opening. I get the frustration with some of it. Some of it is true. There is a lot of retreads, to use another phrase there in it, where this isn't one of them, and it is because he's got another opportunity. But when you've done, he's got 2 Stanley Cup Finals, 6 conference finals. 6 conference finals. Think about that for a second. So 8 times in his coaching career, he's gotten his team to the semifinals or further. And then if you think that it's still a retread and it's garbage and there should have been something else, look up anybody else who's got that resume. And I know that if you're going to go like John Cooper and you've got Stanley Cups, like I get the Stanley Cups, but just consistently getting a team that far, it's so challenging. It's so hard to play as a player and a coach to get that deep into the playoffs. It just doesn't happen. So this isn't one of those. This isn't one of those. Is it a coach that's been around? Yeah, he's a coach that's looking to finally get over that final hump. And I find this to be one that's just doesn't fall under that category, because he's got quite the resume. Even though there's not a Stanley Cup, he's done
Mhm.
something that most coaches cannot do.
I don't think Islander fans are saying that. Like from everything I've seen, it's been mostly positive. Like I don't think anyone is upset with this move or disagrees with it. I'm not disagreeing with it, just to be clear. Like
Yeah.
I just think if the Islanders and I know this is obviously a hypothetical because he probably would have been taken by somebody else, but if the Islanders had hired Pete DeBoer 2 years from now, I'd probably feel much better about it, if that makes sense. Like I still think they're like early in this next progression. Obviously they, people are talking that they got
Well,
rid of
that's
a
why they
first
gave
round
him a
pick and
long-term
whatever.
deal.
But they got rid of a first round pick and a third round pick for Shen and whatever, and that sped up everything. I don't think the Shen move necessarily sped it all up, but I think this does. And Arthur, I know you kind of disagree. You think the Palat and the Shen moves probably is what got it spiraling a little bit. But to me, it's really this that is like the actual wake up of like, okay, we're going for it now in the next few years. This is not just like it's cute, we'll make the playoffs and then next year we'll see what happens. It's like no, we're fucking in this now. And while that's great, like that, I think that's what Islander fans want, and that's what everyone.
Hey,
wants.
I don't want
That's
to.
what
I don't
the
want to.
fan base of
Yeah.
every team wants. Like when you're floating like they've been and trying to assure people that, oh no, our goal is the Stanley Cup every year, and you don't make changes and you extend the same guys who looked a little bit creaky the year before. The fans are smart. They can see through that stuff. I think when you make a move like this to say, we've got a guy, we paid a premium to get him, we made a huge move to get him ahead of everybody else that wanted him, I think you're making a declaration that says we will do the other things to make this progress faster. I understand the skepticism because Matthew Darsh didn't get the trades done that were rumored to get done during the season, but they can revisit all of those guys. And I feel like additions are going to be important. To me, subtractions from this roster are going to be the thing that shows that they're ready to change. I love Adam Pelech's game. He's been their best defenseman probably in the 21st century. Defensive defenseman, a guy who is a throwback. You don't hear about shutdown guys very much anymore, and he was that guy for a long time for them. But he's got 3 years left at 5.75. He's got some trade protection, but you have to start rebuilding this thing. You have to let people get rid of that safety net of having him always being available to be out there. And the injuries have kind of slowed him down a bit. You've got a guy in Scott Mayfield. Maybe Peter DeBoer can find a way to structure a D where Scott Mayfield can be a positive presence. But, he really hasn't been this year. And I love the guy. He's been around a long time. He's a great Islander. But I think you have to start thinking about a buyout for him this summer. If you're really going to commit, it's not just about, do we have the cap space? This guy's not taking up a cap space. It's more about entrenched roles to me. You've got guys that you're always rolling out there. If you're coach coming in, even if you're Patrick Waugh, if you watch the Islanders before he comes in, you say, all right, I've got Pelech, I've got Ryan Pulock, I've got Scott Mayfield. Those are three of my mainstays. They've been there for a long time. You got to get rid of that mentality. And I think, I don't think that everybody's going to be on the table this summer, but I feel like Pelech is a guy that you could move that could bring back something. And honestly, Barzal is a guy that you could move that could bring back quite a bit and change the way that the team looks and feels. And it's not my first choice necessarily to trade Matthew Barzal, but you're looking at the guys that you have available to move that would really change things up for this team. And he's probably at the top of your list. And I do kind of wonder if he's ready to get a fresh start. He was super excited. I remember being in the room the day after they hired Patrick Waugh, and nobody was more excited than Matthew Barzal because of who Patrick Waugh was. But I feel like, a team's treading water. A star like that is treading water a little bit, not making the playoffs. Maybe he's ready for something new. So like I said, I don't know. You can't jump from this hire to say guaranteed they're going to look completely different next year, but they're damn sure going to try. And I feel like that's a huge step in the right direction for them.
Rupper, you had something. You bit your tongue for a second there. You were going to go.
No. That was, I didn't have anything else to add.
All right. I thought you did. But what I was going to say, and I agree. About Barzal, I don't agree because I don't think he wants to change the scenery. He loves this place. I know Matt Barzal loves New York and loves Long Island. I don't know if it's him that would want the change, but I think maybe from the organizational standpoint to have a different look, I'd see it more on their side than I do on his side. It's much different. We've talked about the Adam Fox. I think it's much different than what the Adam Fox situation would be, right? I think Adam Fox would maybe be the one that's leaning more toward a change of scenery versus the Rangers, where this one is maybe more the Islanders more than it is Barzal. But we talked about it this morning, Arthur. I think the Islanders' biggest problem has been believing in this group for so long, right? They believed and they believed and they would not achieve anything outside of those two Eastern Conference Finals runs. And at what point do you break it all up? And this seems like the time where you saw Brock Nelson, get sent off last year. Beauvillier leaves a few years ago. Those are key parts. Anders Lee is now the question for next year. Slowly but surely, these faces that Islander fans have, loved and recognized over the years are now going to slowly see their way out. And that's, I think, what this move sort of signals, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
and guess what? They don't need a fucking letter to do it.
You'd always bring it back around to the Rangers, but the other part is Matthew Darche hasn't even been on the job for a year yet. This is going to be his first true off season, and he's going into it with the coach that there's at least 4 other teams, probably teams that haven't even fired their coach yet, that were saying, "Shit, that was the guy that I wanted." So you've taken that guy away from some other teams that might have wanted him, and now you've got him behind your bench. So you're kind of, I think the focus shifts back to Matthew Darche and to ownership to say, what are we willing to do to change this roster to make it better? And again,
I love that he said we got the best free agent. I thought that was a great quote that he said today.
Yeah, and I feel like that's also a phrase that no Islander GM has ever said about actual free agents, because
never even heard that before.
So, so I feel like he's putting the pressure on himself, but it's in a good way. And you got to give him a chance to have a full offseason where he's not just kind of, getting to know the office staff and get to know everybody. I feel like you can judge some of these trades. Carson Soucy hasn't played great lately. Andre Palat really hasn't played well, and that's kind of a piece where he hasn't played well all season, even when he was in Jersey. Honestly, if the only move that they had made was Braden Shen, I'd be like, yeah, that was pretty good. I actually like the way this guy's played. I like the way that he's fit in. I think he has the right mentality for this Islander team. He's been pretty productive too, all things considered. So, you can't just judge them off of these things. And I understand that Palat still has a year left and Shen still has 2, so they're not just short-term moves. And he's going to have to figure out a way to move off of Palat this offseason in all likelihood. So there's just a lot to do for them this offseason. And I feel like if they had floated along, like I said, if they had floated along and made it by a point or two and gotten bounced in the first round, like they've done 2 or 3 times before since Barry Trotz left, would you say, okay, well, let's see what we got next year. We got all these guys signed, and we've got Patrick Waugh, and we'll see if we can, if Matthew Schaefer can be even better at 19, and Ilya Sorokin can be even better in the net, and that's madness to me. Like you're just trying to tread water, and I don't understand that. And especially like we were talking about with the Devils, how many tweaks do you need to be a competitive team in the Metro Division right now? Not that many. Carolina's Carolina. They're going to do what they do in the regular season. And everybody else, to me, has a ton of question marks going into next season. Columbus, we don't know. Bones is going to be back. Pittsburgh, can they do this again next year? Philly, can they do this again next year? Are they going to keep climbing? Islanders, Rangers. There's a lot of things to wonder about this division. And if you can put the right pieces together in the offseason that gets you an extra 10 points, well, that's second place. That's a pretty good place to be. You could be in second place for the next 4 or 5 years. So I like the aggressiveness. I like the decisiveness, and I'm interested to see how they back it up once the season ends.
Anything else from you, Rupper, as far as the Islanders go? I got nothing else for Islanders. We can do a little bit of Rangers before we wrap it up.
Just a quick comment on the balls of Matthew Darsh. You know what I mean? Conviction. Like that's what you want in that role. And for a guy that's coming in his first year as GM in the National Hockey League of a pretty storied franchise and what they've done in the past, trying to get him back to that spot, I find it very impressive. And even who that coach was making that tough move, like it's balls. It's balls and conviction, and that's what you want. And I think there'd be a lot of fan bases out there that are jealous of the type of GM that they have. So we'll see how it all shakes out. I want to see how it shakes out in the remaining games here.
Yeah.
But I do like that move a lot.
That's what I was going to say. I really do feel for Patrick Waugh. Like going to battle all year with these guys and like probably falling in love with Matthew Schaefer, the year that Sorokin's had, to be 4 games away from wondering if you'll get into the playoffs, to be let go. Like that's got to be fucking crushing. That's really got to be
Here's the other thing too. And I hope Islander fans, I think Islander fans for the most part like Patty Waugh. I from a distance, I liked what I saw from him and the way he spoke and the way it seemed like the players revered him. I just want to say Matthew Schaefer we're learning about him, but he's incredible. He needed to be put in the right situations, and a head coach in the way that Patty managed this year, it's reflective in how Matthew Schaefer's playing. Matthew Schaefer couldn't play in front of everybody and be where he's at now. Like he's still great, so we would have seen it and it would have been great, but like there had to have been many crossroads where a decision had to be made of whether it's how to use him on this night or he did something wrong there. Do we overly correct it? Do we step on it? Do we clip his wings? Oh, that's important. He's got to learn that later. Like all these things that are totally natural for a coach to have. It seems like they pushed all the right buttons with him, and Matthew Schaefer's incredible. So I want to give him all the respect there. But Patty Waugh, Islander fans, give him love in the way he managed that too, because it doesn't just happen. He's got to be put in the right situations, and he's got to be shown that he's believed in. You know what I mean? Like you could sit there and have all the confidence in the world as a player, but inside the locker room, if you have a coach that's in there cutting you down, even one-on-one in your videos, I've been there, and you're sitting there looking, it's like, whoa, man, like, come on, dude, we're supposed to be for me here, you know? And so I think with the success that Matthew Schaefer has had, I think Patty Waugh needs to get a round of applause in regards to that as well.
I'd say even just the accountability factor too, like the amount of times that he, it did happen to be Barzal a couple times with the alarm clock earlier in the year and then being benched later in the year. But like those are things that, Ranger fans, again, I'll make it about the Rangers, sorry, Arthur, but like Ranger fans had begged, Laviolette to bench one of the veterans when they were fucking checked. Not that Barzal was checked out, but when they weren't playing well, like Wad held these guys accountable. He did, and I think a lot of fans want that from everyone on their team. And I think that's something that Matthew Barzal said today when he was talking to reporters, was that he learned a lot under Patrick Waugh about just like the straight up honesty when you look into him eye to eye and he tells you the truth and you know where you stand with him. There's no bullshit. And, I know we've had coaches, Rupper, that have bullshitted us, and, you can tell, you can read right through it. And you'd much rather have the guy, whether it is tough love or not, to just let you know where you stand. And I think that is something
100%.
that a lot of players love and respect. So I do think, like, while Islander fans are happy to move on from Waugh just because the last 4 games, there might be moments where you wonder how Waugh would have handled a certain situation. I think maybe going forward, because he is so different and so fiery from most other NHL coaches. Like, you don't really see other guys coach the way he does.
Are we going to see goaltenders being pulled with like 9 minutes left in the third period, or 8 minutes left?
Meanwhile, Philly didn't score the other night. He pulled Sorokin with like 8 minutes left, and Philly didn't even get an empty netter. I couldn't believe it. That was insane. 8 minutes of empty net.
Maybe they'll be in fewer situations where they need to pull them with 8 minutes left. That'll be the best outcome possible.
Yeah, but let's do a little bit of Rangers, because honestly, like, I know we've kind of shitted them a little bit. It's been nice going to the Garden. I had weird emotions last night. Last night was my last game, and whenever your season ends, like, obviously it's different now than when you're playing. It's a weird feeling emotionally. Like, I've been on teams where I couldn't wait for the season to end, and then when that day comes, it's like, oh man, like, I'm gonna miss this. It's like another 5 months without hockey, So for me, I had that weird emotion last night where I was like, this dreadful year at the Garden is finally over for me, but like, I'll miss it because you get to go watch hockey, and it's work and it's awesome. And the Rangers have had good vibes lately. They've won 5 out of 6 on home ice, and they have one more home game coming. But Yaroslav Hamelash has been so fun and enjoyable. Adam Sikora has been so fun and enjoyable. Gabe Perreault, Will Cooley with the back-to-back hat tricks this weekend. Like, there's a lot of things about the Rangers to feel good about right now, which is almost like a little bit concerning because it could be misleading going into next year. But I guess, what have you guys made of how the Rangers have responded down the stretch to accepting their reality and knowing that they're out of the playoffs, and what they've done from that?
Playing hard, man. I love that.
I got a little distracted thinking, what's the reporter equivalent of the shirts off your back for the last night? Were you like, took your notebook away or something?
My handwriting with dog shirts. I don't know if it's worth anything.
Your pen. I think it's great. Hope sells for sure, and I think fans, again, we talk about fans are smart. They understand that when the team's not going well, all you want is to see some promise, see the reason behind they're doing what they're doing. And I think we, as a show, and people in the media and plenty of fans have said, what is this team doing since the start of last year? What are they doing to change what they need, what they said they want to change, turn around what they need to turn around, become younger, do all these things. And you haven't really seen the plan at work. So when you see these guys, and they're not, Yaroslav Hamelash is not going to be a top 6 NHL player. Adam Sikora is not going to be a top 6 forward who scores a goal a game, which he seems to be doing now. Drew Fortescue, probably not going to be a top pair NHL defenseman. Dylan Garand is not going to be a number 1 goalie. It doesn't matter. When you see these guys getting their opportunities and succeeding with them, and I don't want to leave Gabe Perreault out because he is a top line guy and he is kind of the crown jewel of that prospect group. But it's a prospect group that's not, heavily lauded, that's not particularly deep, that doesn't have a lot of big names. But when you have guys that can seize their opportunity like these guys are doing, and you see bigger smiles on the veterans' faces, you see the post-game locker room picture that they put out, instead of just 1 or 2 guys, it's all 20 guys with whoever gets the Broadway hat. I think that means something. And I understand the results do not. But what these guys are doing, seeing the bromance between Hamelash and Sikora that developed in Hartford, that's continuing on, I think it energizes everybody and it pushes everybody, because that if these guys aren't on the roster to start next season, they've shown that they can be on the roster. So you don't let veteran guys get complacent. You don't need to sign a guy like a Connor Sheary, who has also played great lately, as a stopgap because you know that some of these guys can handle it. So I just think it means a lot because you have a really good coach in place. You're not looking to change that dynamic. You have some veteran players that have had bounce back seasons like Zibanejad. I think Adam Fox has had a fantastic season when he's been healthy, and nobody's really talking about it because it doesn't matter. I think Shesterkin has had a fantastic season. So you've got those pieces, and now you've got some young guys who are hungry, who are showing some balls, who are showing some excitement. It's suddenly become a good mix. It was the worst vibes that any of us have ever been around in that locker room last year, and I'm sure this year too. Just not a good feeling at all. And now it's changed. So that to me, whatever happens with their draft position, if they lose a few ping pong balls, whatever, like carry those feelings and those emotions, whether it's the guys, whether it's the coaching staff, whether it's the front office, the fans too, like those feelings you get, those are good feelings. And those are the things, those intangibles that you can bring to a new season and start fresh with, and just have a real bit of excitement around this team going to training camp next year that we didn't think they'd have for a long, long time. So I love it.
Rupper?
Yeah, no, they're just fun. They're fun to watch, man. The way they're competing. They're competing, and just like you mentioned it, some guys have smiles on their faces. Holy shit. You know what I mean? Hockey's fun. And it feels like that from where we are right now. So hopefully they're feeling that on the ice. And it just, I don't believe that this team, and I don't think they want to do it. I don't think they need to gut everything out. I think they need to have conversations this summer with some of the veteran guys, whether they want to keep them or not, just to make sure everybody's on the same page. Where are we at in this? Like with this, what's your aspirations and desires with this team? And I don't believe it's going to be a quick turnaround. I really don't. I think it's got the ability to be quicker because of some of the pieces you have. If Mika can continue to play at this level, you got Perreault, Lafreniere, Adam Fox.
I do think Trocheck's gone though. I do think Trocheck's gone.
I think that could be a real possibility.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
You're not gonna not fill that spot. You're not just gonna say, okay, Noah Laba, you're a number 2 center. This is the Rangers. They don't just leave spots unfilled. They're gonna if they trade him, they're gonna get a decent amount of assets back, whether it's a good young prospect to add to this group who could be a number 2 center in the future, another pick, maybe another younger ready player, whether a depth D or another middle 6 guy. If they're, I'm trying to think of a team, if they're the Sharks next year, I know they don't have a Mac on that roster, but if they're the Sharks next year, where it's a bunch of hungry young guys and visiting teams and media that doesn't pay close attention will be like, Colin Graff, who the fuck is, and this kid's putting up 20 goals. If they got a guy like that, that's great. I think that's a total transformation from what they've been the last 2 years. And I understand that. And again, we've been talking about it with the other 2 teams with the decisions they made. If you catch lightning in a bottle, Shesterkin has a season like he had in 21-22. You're a playoff team in that division for sure. So I don't think I think you can trade Trocheck. I think if other guys start to ask out, if Fox says he wants to go, if Mika says he wants to go, that could be an issue because those are guys that are, to me, much harder to replace. But if you get a healthy JT Miller, maybe as your number 2 center next year, and
he's actually looked great here down the stretch. Not gonna lie.
I think he's healthy. I think he's healthy finally, and this is a guy. He hasn't looked good. He hasn't sounded good. He hasn't felt good. But he is not that far off from a 100-point NHL player. So if he is your number 2 center, you've got your top line set, let's say, with Perreault, Mika, and Lafreniere. You've got JT Miller and Will Cooley. You've got some mix of Ty Cartier and some other guys in that middle 6. And again, Johnny, you should just trademark Ty Cartier middle 6er.
He's great. He's great. He dropped the gloves last night too. He's
awesome.
I know. I'm friendly with
Duhaime,
and Duhaime is the one who fought him, and he was like, "What did he say?" I shouldn't read what he texted me, but he was caught by surprise, I guess, by Cartier and that fight. Like,
I
He's
just
like,
I just
I
think
wonder
that
if the fucker's head off or something like that. I don't know. It's funny.
there is a way for this team to be, if not good next year, decent. And I think that's decent with a bunch of guys that they've drafted and developed and a bunch of guys who care.
Mhm.
It's a simple formula to me. And if it works, fans are going to love it. The place is going to be loud again.
Let me ask you both a question here, and Rupper, I'll go to you first. Has the criticism of JT been a little bit too harsh? You know, obviously it's New York. The team has not been winning. You've seen how they've treated captains in the past. You see how Jacob Trouba got it a couple of years ago. So it could be expected. And JT, obviously, he knows it wasn't his best. But do you think it's been too much? Because like all the things I saw online after that fucking face-off against Montreal, I was going to lose my I don't even know. I was just going to lose my head having to defend JT for what, 99% of NHL players would agree with.
Yeah, I like JT. I think his way he carries himself, his body language gets broken
Picked
down a
apart.
lot,
Yeah.
and I think that's something that I think rubs people the wrong way. I would have to assume like that body language you're seeing, he's not. I don't believe he's bringing that inside that room, or he never would have been named captain. I think that this is a guy that he doesn't always say the things I think media trained hockey players say, but I kind of like that. And he'll frustrate you with some of the things he says, but he also is a player that I just feel like you have those certain players in your career that when you get in that moment, and I don't know, he may be rough around the edges at times, but I know when you get into like game 7 or you get into a playoff series, there's not a doubt in my mind I'd want that guy on my side. You know what I mean? Because all those attributes that maybe sometimes that we hear maybe rub people the wrong way, like you need the things that he does and the way he is. I don't know. I used to think of like the way he kind of carries himself, to be honest with you, at times, and not like gameplay wise. I'm talking about expression. John Madden, who I played with in New Jersey, John, we call him Mad Dog.
He's
John
coaching
Madden
now,
was
isn't
a
he?
type of yeah, he's in Utah, and
Yeah.
so Mad Dog was a type of guy. We used to carpool together. We lived in the same town in Jersey, and he'd be the type of guy like you'd see him some days when you go to the rink, and he just have this scowl on his face, this look, and you just kind of knew like just let him be. Like he'd be grumpy, and there'd be days where he's hilarious, cracking jokes and whatever. But at the end of the day, like he would say some things I think that would rub people the wrong way, but it was always to like engage you to play harder, to dig in more, to do whatever. And so at the end of the day, like from all I listen, and I was very fortunate in my career to play with a lot of great players and some Hall of Famers and all that stuff. If I was to make a list of a one game and I could pick guys to be on my team, that guy is one of my first draft picks. He'll chew off someone's arm to get a puck. You know what I mean? Like when the stakes get higher, he gets meaner and he finds ways. To me, like that's JT, and I think JT. I heard it said before, and I thought it was pretty accurate. And maybe this is something like with him. JT's an amplifier. When things are going and the team's going good, man, he looks fucking great. But when things aren't good, he amplifies that way too. And it comes across as, and maybe that's when things aren't going good. We start nitpicking as fans, and you're looking and watching, oh, look at his body language here. Look, he didn't stand there and give high fives going off the ice. Like we start nitpicking that stuff. At the end of the day, I think the way that he's kind of revered, I'd want JT Miller on my side. So yeah, I think that fans are pretty hard on him. It's probably brings some of that upon himself, which is the way he kind of carries himself.
Arthur, anything from your end on that?
No, the amplifier is a good way to describe it, and I think we see it with Jack. We saw it with Jack too. Like, we know it's hard to know. Jack's injury was pretty obvious, and took it. We all knew he came back too early. JT, his injury was pretty obvious at the beginning of the season. You could see he was laboring, and hindsight 2020. Obviously, maybe if he'd sat out, a month or so at the beginning of the year, we wouldn't have this narrative going on about him. But you guys played at a high level. When you're not right, you can't, it seems like it's impossible to do anything right. It just magnifies itself. You can't be the player you want to be. JT is a guy who loves to mix it up, be physical. If it's a soft tissue injury that he had or a muscle injury at his core, he's not the greatest skater in the world even when he's healthy. So then that looks terrible. And like you said, he's got a terrible poker face, and so he's beating himself up. He's beating himself up in the media. You almost wanted to give him the number of a good therapist. Some of those sessions that he had. So it just snowballs. And I it's his first year as a captain. You got to learn. It's hard to learn on the job, especially in this job, because there's a lot of eyes on you. So I hope he will learn. And it seemed like it was a learning year for a lot of people, learning a couple of years for a lot of people. So if they're finally coming out of this malaise, and it's all self-inflicted, they started it themselves from the front office. So you can't absolve everybody with blame.
I'm happy you said that. I said it's not adversity, it's self-sabotage.
Yes, I agree. And so if you're starting to finally come out of it with some of these young guys who weren't around when all this stuff started, with some of the veteran guys that are saying, okay, there's only one way to get, there's only one way out, and it's through, and they've gotten through it. And they've got a coach that everybody seems to respond to most of the time. That's it. It's been a fucking shit 2 years for sure. But if it can all come together with health and with youth and with a renewed attitude going into next season, then I wouldn't say it's been worth it, but at least it's over with.
All right. So to wrap up today's show, we got our Islanders news. We got our Devils news. One hot take. What's the next ball to drop for the New York Rangers? Is it a player out? Is it a GM fired? Give me your guess.
Next ball to drop. I mean, you said it. I think Vincent Trocheck gets
Trocheck
this offseason.
Yeah.
I think the center market is going to be so thin, free agent wise, and even trade wise, that gamble by Chris Drury to keep him at the deadline, and I think that gamble might pay off. I don't know if they're going to get a better package as we get close to the draft, but they'll get something good, and I think they'll be better in the long run for it.
Correct me. When can trades start up again? Because I remember Omar got traded I think during a warm up of Game 7 2 years ago. Did he not? Of the Stanley Cup final. I remember that.
Once your season ends, you can trade anybody.
That's how
I think you can trade anybody if you're in the playoffs, which would be weird. But if your season's over and the other team's season's over, they just don't want you announcing it on. They don't want you announcing it on game days in the finals. That's the only kind of unwritten rule. So, they can get after it as soon as their season's done.
Got it. Okay. All right. Any final thoughts, guys, before we wrap up today's show?
I want your hot take, Johnny. What's coming next for your boys?
Well, mine was Trocheck, but I would say I was talking to Jason Demers a little bit. My hot take is that some way, somehow, I don't know what the package is, but the Rangers find a way to move Braden Schneider for Michael Kesselring in Buffalo. Kesselring hasn't been playing much. I think he's a big right-handed shot defenseman who needs that change of scenery, just like Schneider. I think it's a good thing for both teams. Kesselring, big body, 26 years old, RFA, just like Schneider. I don't know how that stuff. I'm not super dialed in on how the contracts and RFA stuff works for trades and whatnot, but that's a swap I would like to see. And I'll shout out Jason Demers for that call. So Rupper, next time you're on the network with him, maybe you can bring that up. I'm sure he'd love to talk about it. So. I think Kesselring would have been in Arizona, right? For a little bit.
Wasn't he part of the Doan?
Yeah, he was part of the believe so. Yeah.
Yeah, he was he's very he had that injury, but that could come off that could be depending on what happens there and if he was to get moved and flipped. I know that it hasn't worked out there in Buffalo for him, but
his contract's up too.
Doan and Kesselring, that's a pretty lopsided trade for JJ Peterka. In Buffalo's favor. If Kesselring was healthy, I know that's a big if, but that would be a very interesting one because he's got good size, plays with a little bit of he's hard to play against, a little bit of jam. I don't think he's can fight that much or does, but he's just a big body. So that would be that's an interesting one. I'm bringing it up with JD. JD was with them in a little bit of time too, and I think he did some work with them. So he's big on that guy.
Yeah, and that's Jason Demers we're talking about, by the way, for people who don't know. But yeah, I'd say that's my quote unquote hot take, even though I'm technically stealing it from JD. I said the Islanders. I think the Islanders would be interesting for Kesselring too, because they could use to bolster up their right side also. Like he's a guy just right now who seems like he could be an underrated name for a young guy. But with that said, as always, our show is presented by Bet365. There are a few things more stressful than a close hockey game. One late back check could make all the difference between a chance at playoff glory or an early spring tea time. That's why Bet365, an official partner of the NHL, is offering 3-goal early payout. If the team you are riding goes up 3 goals at any point in the game, they'll pay your bet out early. Hockey fans have enough things to stress about with 3-goal early payout. Now your bets don't have to be one of them. Bet365, down the app. You must be 19 or older, so please play responsibly. And Arthur, you might love this one, but the bet that I'm going to put in today, the New York Islanders are plus 225 to make the playoffs. Right now they're on the outside looking in. You got to think that Pete DeBoer, new coach bump, kicks in. 4 games left. All 4 games are home. That game next Saturday against Ottawa is going to be unbelievable. A 1 o'clock matinee on Saturday at UBS Arena. Can't wait for that one. We'll probably talk to you before then. The Islanders play on Thursday night, but it should be a fun little 4-game stretch here for the New York Islanders to find their way back above that cut line. And with that, thank you to both of you. Thank you to our producer, Vic. And we'll figure out when we're going to record later this week. I know schedules are a little messed up, basically on my end with the Frozen Four. Quinn Finley is someone to watch in the Frozen Four coming up this weekend. That'll be exciting for Wisconsin. And we will talk to you later in the week. Love you guys. Hope you enjoyed that video. And if you want to see some more Tri-State hockey content, don't forget to leave a like and comment on the video below. And also subscribe to the Daily Faceoff YouTube channel.